Making headlines for the 2 weeks ending November 24th. The heat is on, Middle East and Europe experiencing unprecedented shakedown on all levels. The sound of swamp. Trump playing wild cards in fulfilling promise to drain the swamp around the U.S. Fueling disclosure. Could Russia take the lead? Sources suggesting this may already be happening. And how to win in court. Understanding one term and one question could put you on the winning side representing yourself.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. It seems that the long-awaited public exposures and arrests are beginning to take place. It has been a long time coming, and to be sure, we still have to wait a bit longer before we can confirm for ourselves that this is really happening. However, numerous sources are now reporting on activities that suggest the group of humans I call the global cabal are running scared on multiple fronts. The question is where to start. So this week I'm choosing to start with the geopolitical events in Zimbabwe and Europe. After the events in Saudi Arabia led to the arrests of many princes and the freezing of funds alleged to be in the area of $3 trillion, the cleaning of the swamp has begun moving on. In Zimbabwe, after almost 40 years of what some have claimed to be a dictator-style leadership, celebrations have begun with the announced resignation of President Robert Mugabe. The story began around November 14th and proceeded rather quietly and peacefully. Peta Thornycroft of the London Telegraph reported on the 15th that the military has taken over Zimbabwe, placing President Robert Mugabe under house arrest and detaining senior government officials in what many are expecting to be the beginning of a transition of power. An army general, speaking on behalf of the military, was quoted as saying that it is not a military takeover of government. We are only targeting criminals around him who are committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country in order to bring them to justice. As soon as we have accomplished our mission, we expect that the situation will return to normalcy. An article from Al Jazeera reported on the 15th that the general's statement was prompted by last week's controversial sacking of Mugabe's vice president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, who was previously considered the leading contender to succeed the 93-year-old president upon retirement. Mnangagwa has a close relationship with some members of the military, which is why they came to his defense following his sacking. It was Mnangagwa's expulsion that brought the confrontation between Mugabe and the military. The firing is believed to have happened because Mugabe's wife Grace, herself not very popular in the country, was having political ambitions of her own, and Mugabe apparently sought to make her pathway to the position of president easier. However, protests began. One article from Al Jazeera on November 17th reported on plans for mass rallies against Mugabe. Around the same time, and certainly not helping Mugabe, the ZimbabweToday.com website reported the country's finance minister as having been arrested at his home after a short gunfight and having possession of US $10 million in cash. Another London Telegraph article on November 18th reported on how the people were beginning to feel hopeful again in Zimbabwe. One citizen was quoted as saying, "There is hope in the air. Our jewel is ready to shine." Mugabe had stated his intention to remain in the leadership of the party, but his fate was sealed when his own party removed him as its leader. After several more days of tension, as the world wondered what was really going on, Mugabe finally bowed to the pressure and submitted his letter of resignation to the Speaker of the Parliament. On November 24th, Tende Marima, reporting for Al Jazeera, wrote the following. Emmerson Mnangagwa is set to be sworn in as Zimbabwe's new president, marking the end of Robert Mugabe's 37-year reign over the country. Many ordinary Zimbabweans seem optimistic at Mnangagwa's takeover, hoping that a change in command could set the struggling nation on a better path and improve its poor economic situation. Mnangagwa, who had fled to South Africa after his firing on November 6th, promised job creation and economic stability during his first speech upon returning to the country. A statement issued by the African Union Commission chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat hailed the relatively peaceful transfer of power from the non-agenarian to his deputy. President Mugabe's decision to resign paves the way for a transition process owned and led by the sovereign people of Zimbabwe, he said. Similarly, Ian Khama, the president of Botswana and an outspoken critic of the former president, expressed optimism for the country in a post-Mugabe era. Zimbabwe has got the potential of being an economic powerhouse, he said. Sources have been speculating for many years that the Zimbabwe currency has been kept intentionally flat and dependent upon the US dollar. With the new leadership, perhaps a new economic direction will steer this country in a direction fulfilling greater potential for its people, but also for the world as well. In Israel, the net is closing in on Prime Minister Netanyahu there. Chris Baines, reporting for the London Independent, reported on November 19th that police have arrived at Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's official residence as part of an investigation into corruption allegations. Now, this is not exactly new. The police have been to his house on at least 4 or 5 occasions previously. A Senate probe is looking into secret talks with the publisher of a major Israeli newspaper in which the Israeli leader allegedly requested positive coverage in exchange for reining in another competing free pro-Netanyahu daily. Although his leadership has not been officially threatened by the police investigations yet, it has harmed his image publicly. Shifting to Germany, it seems that the longtime leadership of German Chancellor Angela Merkel is also about to come to an abrupt end. A London Express article reported on November 22nd that despite her best attempts to secure a 4th term as Chancellor, Mrs. Merkel's Christian Democratic Union Party, CDU, suffered heavy losses in September's elections, and she has failed to cobble together a so-called Jamaica alliance with the Greens and the Free Democrats, the FDP. Depending on what Germany's President Frank-Walter Steinmeier decides, millions of voters could find themselves going back to the polls next year for a snap election. Or he could tell Ms. Merkel, Europe's most powerful leader after 12 years in office, to seek further coalition talks. Hans Christian Ströbele, who helped co-found the party that would become the Greens in the 1980s, said he could not envisage the Chancellor staying in her role for much longer. RT reported the euro currency as taking a pretty big hit with the news of Merkel's coming departure. The article reported the following. The European currency plunged to a 2-month low against the yen on news that in Germany the pro-business Free Democrats, the FDP, have pulled out of 4-week negotiations with Chancellor Merkel's conservative bloc and ecologist Greens. The head of the German FDP party, Christian Lindner, was reported as saying that it's better not to govern than to govern badly. A Zero Hedge article from November 20th notes that this may mean to Germany and its role within the EU power structure. The article writes that this has profound implications for the so-called French-German axis as it slides towards Paris. We are not going to see a new German government waste time on issues like closer EU union, European banking union, or critical finance issues like reforming ESM or new approaches on quantitative easing and bailout funds. The options for Merkel are not very good. A worst-case scenario has been suggested as being another snap election within months of the last one. The best-case scenario, but not much better, has been hinted as being that Merkel is somehow able to put together a minority coalition government, but this would leave her party weak and vulnerable. Tom Luongo, in an article posted on the Russia Insider website on November 21st, digs a bit more deeply into Merkel's past and her policies. He observes how former EU Parliament President Martin Schulz was put into the leadership position of the AfD party to funnel votes towards Merkel while losing himself. The strategy failed, however. As a result of this, Luongo observes that what happened was a complete collapse of Merkel's support, a shift towards a Germany first mentality. This is the opposite of who both Merkel and Schulz are. They are EU people first, and while EU sentiment in Germany is still very favorable, it is not favorable at the expense of German values, and, frankly, German women. Another link Luongo makes concerning Merkel is with George Soros. Luongo writes that Merkel's radical adherence to Soros's open borders ideology will cost her the chancellorship. It will also throw the EU into complete turmoil, as its de facto leader is deposed by a German electorate that is no longer wholly committed to committing cultural suicide as penance for the Holocaust. Luongo then links the German situation to France, writing that this leaves French boy toy Emmanuel Macron to lead the EU at a time when strong leadership is needed to navigate the coming insanity in the banking system. However, things are not smooth for Macron either. Although sweeping to power overwhelmingly, in what many have called a rigged election, Macron's honeymoon with the French people has fallen faster than any other leader in French history. Macron is also facing a revolt within his own party. Henry Samuel, writing for the London Telegraph, noted on November 14th that Emmanuel Macron is facing his first internal revolt since his lightning rise to power after 100 members of his centrist movement announced they were stepping down due to its arrogant and undemocratic methods. Benjamin Fulford, in commenting about Zimbabwe, Israel, and the purging in Saudi Arabia, wrote in his posting from November 20th that the purge of all the Saudi royals and military who were linked to 9/11, as well as the removal of Zimbabwe dictator Robert Mugabe, and the imminent removal of Israeli Satanist Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, leave no doubt that the long-awaited arrests and roundups of Kabbalists worldwide has begun. Fulford comments on the situation facing PM Theresa May in the UK as not being very stable either, and she is expected to be removed soon. Also in the EU, the scandal involving George Soros is coming to a head. RT reported on November 14th that Nigel Farage says, while Russia is accused of funding Britain's Leave campaign, financier George Soros's recent $18 billion donation to pro-EU charity Open Society has escaped scrutiny. This is where the real international political collusion is, Farage says.
Thank you. As Mr. Moscovici said at the start of this, the leak of all these papers and lists of people with offshore holdings has come about because of the Society of Investigative Journalists. But what's not been said this morning, and I think is relevant, is that the funding of these investigations came from one George Soros. Now, I say this at a time, I'm going to come back to so what, and it may have some personal interest for you as well. I say this at a time when the use of money and the influence it may have had on the Brexit result or the Trump election has reached a level of virtual hysteria. Just last week, the Electoral Commission in the UK launched an investigation to find out whether the Leave campaign took offshore money or Russian money. This came about as a result of questions asked in the House of Commons by one Ben Bradshaw, somebody linked to an organisation called Open Society. I just wonder, when we're talking about offshore money, when we're talking about political subversion, when we're talking about collusion, I wonder whether we're looking in the wrong place. And I say that because George Soros recently gave Open Society, his organisation, which of course campaigns for free movement of peoples and supports supranational structures like the European Union, he recently gave it $18 billion. And his influence here and in Brussels is truly extraordinary. Open Society boast that they had 42 meetings last year with the European Commission. They've even published a book of reliable friends in the European Parliament, and there are 226 names on that list, including yours, sir. I thought you'd find this interesting. We even had last week Mr Verhofstadt lobbying on behalf of Mr Soros at the Conference of Presidents in a battle that is going on with Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary. If we're going to have a debate and we're going to talk about full political and financial transparency, well, let's do it. So I should be writing today to all 226 of you, asking some pretty fair questions. Have you ever received funds, directly or indirectly, from Open Society? How many of their events have you attended? Could you please give us a list of the meetings of all the representatives, including George Soros yourself? And I think this Parliament should now set up a special committee to look into all of this. And I say that because I fear we could be looking at the biggest level of international political collusion in history.
A few days later, RT reported that in a 177-page pamphlet published by Open Society entitled Reliable Allies in the European Parliament from 2014 to 2019, 226 EU MEPs are listed and labeled according to their political orientation and views. According to the pamphlet, the presence of an MEP in this mapping indicates that they are likely to support Open Society's work. Considering there are 751 members of the European Parliament, reliable allies of George Soros hold at least 1/3 of the seats. The article then asks, what sort of qualifications does an MEP need to be included among Open Society's reliable allies? A quick preview of the candidate's description field provides some good indication as to what Soros expects from his allies, including a political philosophy that supports the LGBTI movement, open borders, and an anti-Russia stance. The article suggests that there may be a few on the list who are not 100% in alignment with Open Society's policies, which probably is fair to assume. The article also adds this: Soros, who is 87, has been connected to movements and civil disturbances as diverse and distanced as Black Lives Matter movement in the US to the Maidan uprising in Ukraine. And nowhere has Soros's influence been more felt than in the ongoing European debate over migrants. It looks like the European refugee crisis, which has been blamed on the Syrian civil war, would not occur in its current intensity without the direct assistance of the Open Society Foundation. Thanks to the advocacy work of the Migration Policy Institute and the Platform for International Cooperation on Undocumented Migrants, both Soros-sponsored organizations, the mass resettlement of Muslims from the Middle East and North Africa into Europe became the norm. In fact, it appeared that the so-called Merkel Plan, the deal struck by the EU and Turkey, was the brainchild of the European Stability Initiative, in addition to the largesse of George Soros's foundations. This according to F. William Engdahl in an article he wrote in the Near Eastern Outlook. Back in July, former president of Uruguay, José Mujica, once described as the world's poorest president, was quoted in a neonnetal.com article as warning the public to remove wealthy elites from politics. Well, the lights are going down, the curtain is going up, let the show begin, and the swamp be drained. In other geopolitical news, the plug appears to have been pulled and the draining has begun of the cesspool swamp, primarily centered around Washington, D.C. There is so much going on here that perhaps it may just be better to provide a few reports that are summarizing just some of the draining taking place in the U.S. In commenting about the U.S. situation, Fulford noted in his weekly report for November 20th that the purge of the satanic Khazarian cabal that turned the West evil is accelerating at an undeniable pace. Most importantly, Pentagon sources confirm multiple internet reports that Marines stormed the CIA headquarters this past weekend. One of the aims was to shut down Operation Mockingbird, the CIA group that turned the mass media, as well as Google, Facebook, and others social platforms into mass mind control propaganda, say NSA sources. The institutional heirs to the group that murdered President John F. Kennedy are also being rounded up, according to Pentagon sources. The Department of Justice and Special Counsel Robert Mueller are working overtime and may exceed 2,000 sealed indictments, a Pentagon source says. Former CIA Robert David Steele, in an interview with Victoris Libertas from November 15th, he was first asked by the hosts to comment on the sealed indictments that have now allegedly been acted upon, and he then goes into several other topics.
Let me say that I'm good friends with Bill Binney, who's one of the most honest senior executives ever to leave NSA. And he and I have been meeting regularly. And on the 26th of May, we sent a letter to Jeff Sessions telling him how he could go into the NSA database, which is 99% not processed. So anyway, Binney and I pointed out to Sessions how he could put a special task force in and literally map not just the elite pedophiles that are also killing children, but the traitors and the white-collar criminals that are basically laundering money, running drugs, and stuff like that. Now, I'm also hearing that Admiral Rogers may have actually really done something special. And if so, I salute him. All signs are that NSA's data has been exploited by the Department of Justice and done what the FBI could not do in 10 years, which is created the network and provided the documentation. And I believe these indictments are all based on cellular data and emails that Admiral Rogers and others have been able to extract from the previously unprocessed NSA data. There is, I can only speculate because I have no direct knowledge, but there is in my mind no doubt that Donald Trump is ready now to not just indict 1,000 people, but to put 10,000 people under notice that if they continue with their deep state ways, they are toast. So I think we've had a counter coup, and I'm praying for our president, our legitimately elected president-elect, to triumph in the next 90 days.
So you're seeing a lot of positive things coming out of Donald Trump right now?
The short answer is yes. The other thing I'm looking at, Benjamin Fulford is someone I've known for a long time, as well as Neil Keenan, and unfortunately he just passed away, but Sterling Seagraves, the author of Gold Warriors. And Benjamin Fulford has put out some very good stuff that confirms what I speculated on before. I believe that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin cut the same deal that John F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev cut back in the day, which is they would trust each other and not allow their bureaucracies to go to war. And so I believe that Xi and Putin and Trump in Vietnam and in meetings that were not advertised, that were completely off the books, confirmed that they are going to wage peace and we're going to put the Zionists back in a very small box.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Years and years of the mainstream media guarding the Hollywood elite, and all of a sudden we're getting this rash of people coming out and getting indicted basically on sexual abuse. What do you think?
That's a distraction, Jim. First off, the mainstream media has been covering up treason, pedophilia, and Satanism, and white-collar crime, both election fraud and charity fraud, as well as corporate and banking fraud. When Goldman Sachs wants to make $10 billion, they just they manipulate the exchange rate, or they manipulate the interest rate, okay? So the mainstream media and the FBI have basically been turning a blind eye to crimes at a level that most people cannot comprehend. They are trying to cover up the deep pedophilia indictments that are coming down the road with all of this slapstick stuff. The media people have their own pedophiles. But the bottom line here is that the major pedophiles, as well as the traitors and agents of the foreign power, I think Donald Trump now has a complete list of everybody working for Israel, everybody who has betrayed their country, and everybody who is a member of one of these owl churches where children are sacrificed.
So how do you think that the coup has gotten to Trump?
There are two different competing stories. One that is most interesting is that the Marine Corps, which is a very special service, which I have been a part of, came to Trump and gave him a package deal. And it may be that Admiral Rogers had something to do with this. I mean, I've had my doubts about Admiral Rogers, but anybody that Jim Clapper wants fired gets the benefit of the doubt from me. Clapper betrayed his country in multiple ways, as did Mike Hayden and George Tenet and John Brennan. I believe Trump came into this campaign knowing vastly more than people realized. I also believe that there are foreign presidents and billionaires who have been able to brief Trump up in a manner that CIA is simply incapable of comprehending. And so my bottom line is I believe that Donald Trump has been holding multiple wild cards that people haven't known he's got. And he's now set to play them and run the table. I do believe that Trump made some mistakes in some of his early staffing processes. I do believe he's lost a lot of time. I do believe he needs to really push hard on an election reform act, an open source agency with a Trump channel, and a national conversation about grand strategy, and maybe even a national virtual constitutional convention. Right now, Donald Trump is winning against the deep state on points. He's not winning the hearts and minds of the public, and that's what I would like to help change.
Let's talk directly about the Podestas. What's their situation right now?
I only have secondhand knowledge. My best guess is that the Podestas have had their passports revoked. They are wearing ankle bracelets, and they are going to be indicted, judged, convicted, and incarcerated.
But what do you think they're going to be indicted on?
Indicted on? That's a really good question. I wrote a letter to James Comey, which is available at phi-beta-iota.net, in which I pointed out to him that Hillary Clinton was at the intersection of treason, pedophilia, election fraud, and charity fraud. Those are the four big ones. Never mind the Goldman Sachs people manipulating the economy and so forth. In terms of the 1% evil, those are the four big ones. I believe the Podestas are related to all four. And Uranium One, from what I'm reading and hearing, Uranium One was an absolutely slick play by the Russians to entrap the entire Obama administration and play to the greed of Obama and Clinton and others. And then when they fell for it, Putin went to Trump and said, hey, buddy, here's all the stuff we need to hang these people.
Yeah.
So from where I sit, Vladimir Putin is a seriously cool, good guy who is Donald Trump's running buddy in taking down the deep state.
Assuming Steele's information is accurate, and at this time it would seem that most of it is, this might explain why Trump was coming off foolishly during the U.S. election. He had to make people believe that he was incapable of holding the wild cards that Steele believes he was holding on to. It might also explain why the Democrats and media wanted so desperately to pin Russian collusion on Trump, because they did not know that he had the goods on them. The story continues to get really exciting, and it is finally becoming clear that we are about to witness something really public and really spectacular. In the show transcript, I will add numerous other links to information for those seeking more details on some of these events that I did not have time to cover in this broadcast. In financial news now, of course, with all that is taking place now on the geopolitical levels, it cannot be ignored that these events are very much linked to geofinancial events and factors that have been ongoing arguably for decades, if not the last century. Let's try to summarize a few key indicators over the last couple of weeks. Norway is considered one of the wealthiest countries in the world. It has achieved this status by putting away massive revenues from its sale of oil into funds to support the country and people of Norway. You could imagine then that the following story might be alarming to those who are strong investors in big oil. Bloomberg reported on November 17th that Norway's proposal to sell off $35 billion in oil and natural gas stocks brings sudden and unparalleled heft to a once grassroots movement to enlist investors in the fight against climate change. The Nordic nation's $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund said on Thursday that it's considering unloading its shares of ExxonMobil Corp, Royal Dutch Shell, and other oil giants to diversify its holdings and guard against drops in crude prices. European oil stocks, as a result of that, fell. The article continues. Norges Bank Investment Management would not be the first institutional investor to back away from fossil fuels, but until now, most have been state pension funds, universities, and other smaller players that have limited their divestments to coal, tar sands, and some of the other dirtiest fossil fuels. Norway's fund is the world's largest equity investor, controlling about 1.5% of global stocks. If it follows through on its proposal, it would be the first to abandon the sector altogether. This is an enormous change, said Mindy Lubber, president of Ceres, a non-profit that advocates for sustainable investing. It's a shot heard around the world. As more people become consciously aware on various levels, this is beginning to drive the changes taking place on business and corporate levels. It is forcing a new way of thinking, a new way of doing business, and, ultimately, a new way of living. Many are moving over to newer strategies, including cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. The whole trend towards digital, virtual, or cryptocurrencies has been remarkably fast, and many are still overwhelmed about how to take advantage of this new type of money generation. RT asked Max Kaiser to comment on this new trend and whether upcoming cryptocurrencies, or cryptos as some call them, could eliminate the original Bitcoin from existence in the future. According to the article, some investors in cryptocurrency are now moving their money from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, and other alternatives. Max Kaiser, the host of RT's financial program Kaiser Report, advises sticking to the father of all digital money. According to Kaiser, Bitcoin will dominate and lead crypto going forward. Hundreds of obituaries have been written about Bitcoin, and none of them have come true, and none will. Fact is, Bitcoin is a gift from God to help humanity sort out the mess it has made with its money, Kaiser told RT when asked if alternative coins will dethrone Bitcoin. According to Kaiser, the value of Bitcoin will increase to 100,000 from the current record of 8,000. Speaking about altcoins, Kaiser said the top 20 are likely to survive the turbulence of the digital money market. 90% of trading is in the top 20 coins, and that will continue. Coins will come and go. The composition of the top 20 will change less frequently. It's similar to the thousands of stocks that trade on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. Over the years, many disappear, new ones are listed. The difference being that with crypto, things move 100 times faster, he told RT. However, Kaiser severely criticized Bitcoin Cash, the third most popular cryptocurrency, saying it uses the name of the original Bitcoin to earn a buck. He accused it of plagiarism. Bitcoin Cash is an altcoin that has its fans like many altcoins. I don't think anyone who uses Bitcoin's name and applies it to an altcoin like Bitcoin Cash is adhering to acceptable business practices. In other words, Bitcoin's brand is being stolen by a competitor that calls itself Bitcoin Cash, and this is outright fraud in my opinion. Just like it's fraudulent to use Coca-Cola and Nike's name to sell soft drinks or shoes, said Kaiser. One of the key differences between Bitcoin and the US dollar, or other fiat currencies, is pretty simple. Kaiser explains that Bitcoin has been hyper-deflating. The supply of Bitcoin continuously shrinks until no new Bitcoin will exist at all. I can buy 10 times more Lamborghinis this year than I could last year with the same amount of Bitcoin. The US dollar is an inflating asset. There are trillions more of them every year. The amount I need to buy a Lamborghini keeps going up, not going down. It's garbage, he says. My guidance is to use the cryptocurrencies to quickly meet a financial goal and then perhaps withdraw for a while to observe how the prices fluctuate. However, as the financial world is now talking about gold-backed currencies publicly, there are concerns about manipulations in pricing on different levels. CVN has covered Bitcoin and some options fairly heavily. CVN has also noted on many occasions the shift taking place in the financial structures of our world. We appear to be moving back to two strategies, and time will determine which strategy is the one that moves humanity through a temporary period of finances, while eventually moving towards a world where currency, as we currently know it, will no longer be needed. One strategy involves the use of gold-backed currencies. The other strategy revolves around cryptocurrencies. Maybe there is an overlap here. On November 23rd, an article on the geopolitics.co website has asked the question of whether or not Bitcoin is standing in for gold. The article writes the following. In a series of articles posted on paulcraigroberts.org, we have proven to our satisfaction that the prices of gold and silver are manipulated by the bullion banks acting as agents for the Federal Reserve. The bullion prices are manipulated down in order to protect the value of the US dollar from the extraordinary increase in supply resulting from the Federal Reserve's quantitative easing and low interest rate policies. Rigging the bullion's price prevents gold and silver from transmitting to the currency market the devaluation of the dollar that the Federal Reserve's money creation is causing. It is the ability to rig the bullion price that protects the dollar's value from being destroyed by the Federal Reserve's printing press. The article offers two possible concerns about the recent very rapid price increase in Bitcoin. One theory suggests that the Federal Reserve, with its unlimited ability to print money without any risks of loss, has been buying up Bitcoin with an intention to sell and crash the price to scare people away. Another reason, according to the article, is this. People concerned about the fiat currencies, but frustrated in their attempts to take refuge in bullion, have recognized that the supply of Bitcoin is fixed, and Bitcoin futures must be covered. It is strictly impossible for any central bank to increase the supply of Bitcoins. Thus, Bitcoin is standing in for the suppressed function of gold and silver. The article also observes the problem with this, however, because an almost unlimited number of cryptocurrencies can be created. Another article by William Suberg on the Cointelegraph website from November 23rd shares this information about Bitcoin and gold. The manager of Old Mutual Gold and Silver Fund, a precious metals fund with over 220 million under control, has said Bitcoin is paving the way for a global gold comeback. Speaking to Bloomberg in an interview published recently, Ned Naylor Leyland said that the marriage of Bitcoin and gold was essentially a logical one given the characteristics and remit of both. Bitcoin was explicitly designed to be digital gold, he said. Now, of course, that advice needs to be taken with a grain of salt because he is promoting himself and his business with those comments. Research and one's own guidance is key in coming up with a suitable strategy to support oneself in these evolving times. Kaiser's concern about the use of the Bitcoin name for competing currencies may be valid. Another exchange website is called bitcoingold.org. This exchange, however, makes a few claims that currently do not apply to Bitcoin. According to this website, Bitcoin Gold decentralizes mining by adopting a proof-of-work algorithm called Equihash, which cannot be run faster on the specialty equipment used for Bitcoin mining or ASIC miners. Thus, this gives ordinary users a fair opportunity to mine with ubiquitous GPUs. CVN has reported recently on another technology called Hashgraph that claims to be faster and more secure than the blockchain technology used by Bitcoin. At this time, however, Hashgraph has not been created for financial transactions. However, this website does note that Bitcoin Gold uses a different algorithm, as mentioned moments ago, than Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, while the other two use an algorithm called SHA-256. Bitcoin Gold uses Equihash, which seems to suggest a similarity to the Hashgraph technology. For more information on this, a PDF document for Bitcoin Gold will be available for download in the show transcript for this story. Recently, it was announced that Bitcoin would not go through a process called a hard fork. A Cointelegraph article by Darren Pollock on November 14th made a reference to the recent decision to not do a hard fork, and it was a decision that confirmed Bitcoin's status as digital gold. Interested people can read more in the show transcript. The movement is on, however, towards taking advantage of this new money-making trend, while also finding ways to use and benefit from the blockchain technology in ways that will honorably serve and assist humanity and our planet. In general news, CVN has long been attempting to educate listeners on the problems with the current system of law that is being applied around the planet. A system of law that is mostly not law at all, but rather commercial rules that are given the force of law. More and more people are attempting to learn the loopholes within this system of law and begin to share it with others, to assist them in dealing with authorities attempting to override the rights of humans with their commercial contracts and rules. This past week, I came across a video and a few websites, that offer a slightly different way to handle basic court cases where no harm has been committed against another. An example of this may be a traffic ticket. A video on the urlaw.org website offers that there is an easier way to play their game without having to go to the elaborate lengths of proving a straw man identity or a corporate fiction entity, and so on. The video offers something similar, but also claims that it is different. The video will likely need to be listened to several times to fully grasp what is being explained. However, if I have understood the video so far, what it comes down to is asking the court one question, and it relates to the right of subrogation. A commercial court has the jurisdiction to rule on commercial disputes between consenting commercial entities. Most people are unaware that they are consenting to a commercial contract when they go to court. Let's listen to a few minutes from the video, starting at the point where the second definition of subrogation is introduced and explained.
But imagine being able to set off and settle every case peacefully and get them to do it for you without having to play any special games, be an expert in trusts or equity, spend years studying it. Just one simple concept. Let's look at the second definition. I think this clears it up quite a bit. Remembering, they're bringing a bond in, they wrote it on your name, you're the creditor. Your existence gave the credit existence. Just like when you sign an insurance policy, you create a credit instrument. The court is the place where all this happens, and you need the court to exercise it and take care of it for you. If you've studied equity, which is a very advanced thing that a lot of people study out there, I've seen people give classes on it they seem to take years to explain it to you. But in reality, it's just done with one simple thing. There's a bond there. We want to make our claim to it. And if we don't make the claim, then we're in dishonor, and they literally steal the bond and go make money with it. Don't do that. At least that's the theory of how this works behind the scenes. And we've seen plenty of evidence of it, which is why they seem to respond. So let's look at this other definition of subrogation. The subrogation of one person in the place of another with reference to a lawful claim, demand, or right, so that he or she who is substituted succeeds to the rights of the other in relation to the debt or claim, which is the charge or the bill of whatever the case is. and even if it's criminal, and its rights, remedies, and securities. So you're substituting yourself, and you're telling them, I am the claimant here. I want you to substitute me in as the right to the securities to exercise them. That's all you're really doing. And then that sets off the charges. There are two types of subrogation, legal and conventional. Legal subrogation arises by operation of law, whereas conventional subrogation is a result of a contract. Now, people have argued, these are admiralty courts and they got gold fringes around the flag and blah, 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 blah. Throw all that out. Yeah, it might be true, but it's not relevant to winning your case. So let's focus on what matters. So what you're doing is, you go to these courts and they want to get you into a contract. They want you to waive and give up and volunteer into their system and walk away from your securities. That's what they want you to do. So if that's all you need to think about, you don't need to worry about whether you trip up and say your name or you have a driver's license or a U.S. citizen. Just throw all that out for a minute and just look at this. This is what's happening at the moment. You have a right to come in here and make this claim. The purpose of subrogation is to compel the ultimate payment of a debt by the party who, in equity and good conscience, should pay it. The subrogation is an equitable device used to avoid injustice. This is where we talk about equity. People have taught about equity. I'm going to give you the simplest way to ever look at it. You want equity, right? If you brought something of value in, or they created something of value in your name, the equitable thing to do would be to allow you to say, hey, that's mine. Use it to pay the bill. That's equitable, right? So that's what equity is. So you're saying, I want you to exercise my right of subrogation and use your instruments to settle the debt. By the way, when you come to court and you want to sue someone, sometimes the judge will ask you for a bond. Why? Because you have to bring equity in case you do damage to them. Prosecutors and plaintiffs typically need to bring a bond as well. Now, they may or may not do it, but that's what they're supposed to do because they may damage you. Well, now you're saying, hey, I want to use that bond to set off the debt because you created it in my name. So, legal subrogation takes place as a matter of equity, with or without an agreement. So, in other words, you just walk in there, you say, I want my equity. The right of legal subrogation can be either modified or extinguished through a contractual agreement. So you could waive this. It cannot be used to displace a contract agreed upon by the parties. Conventional subrogation arises when one individual satisfies the debt of another as a result of contractual agreement that provides that any claims or liens that exist as security for the debt, that's the charge, the bill, whatever the claim is in the court, to be kept alive for the benefit of the party who pays the debt. So, you're saying, take the security that you brought into this bond, pay the debt with that. That settles the charges. The consideration is the bond that was brought in your name. You're just utilizing it instead of walking away from it and letting them profit from it while you go to jail for not doing what you should have honorably done, which is issue the credit. Well, that's what you're doing. You're issuing the credit. It was issued before you got there. You just need to tell them how to exercise it.
If you are feeling confused by what was shared, do not feel badly. I had to listen to it several times myself to get the full idea of what he was saying there. Here's how I think I understand it. You get a ticket. This becomes a bond that has been created in your name. If you go to court, the court will try to contract you into paying the fine, which becomes a double payment. By claiming your right to subrogation, you can then honorably settle the charges by having the equity in your name applied to the bond or the charge that the court brought against you. As long as no harm has been committed by the individual claiming subrogation, it is believed that this process is generally recognized and accepted by the court. It is important to note that this website, urlaw.org, does not give out legal advice, but merely studies and reports on information that is being discovered and shared. Another website, howtowinincourt.com, breaks down the legal process into a simple series of steps. According to this website, you have an absolute right to represent yourself in court. The key is knowing that court procedures are amazingly simple. Every court case, civil or criminal, is won or lost by proving or disproving what we lawyers call essential fact elements of the case. There are rarely more than 3 or 4 essential fact elements. If you're defending yourself, you win by proving at least one of your opponent's essential fact elements is missing. If you are suing someone else, you win by proving all of your essential fact elements. For example, to win a case for breach of contract, you only need to prove facts that show 1. There was an enforceable contract. 2. The defendant breached the contract. And 3. Defendant's breach caused you to lose money. From what it appears in this information, it is no longer necessary to know anything about the sovereign movement or UCC filings or denying your name in capital letters and so on. With this application, it would seem that one could walk into court, ask this simple question, and direct the court to settle the charges according to the equity in the bond and claimed by the subrogee. More information is available, including the topic of settling subject matter jurisdiction, through the links posted in the show transcript for this story. It is key that one does deeper research on these sites to better understand how best to apply the strategies in your own personal situation. In some disclosure-related news now. If one were to speculate that Russia is attempting to push the issue of disclosure, the existence of life beyond Earth, there could be some validity to this. An article from RT on November 10th has reported that Russian tech billionaire turned ET explorer Yuri Milner says he plans to beat NASA to a mission to the Saturn moon Enceladus in search of alien life forms. The one overarching question we are asking at our foundation is, are we alone in the universe? Said Milner, who has pledged over $200 million to the Breakthrough Initiative, an organization he founded in 2015 that observes space and develops new means of cosmic travel. Speaking at a Seattle conference, A New Space Age, Milner said his science team believes there are 3 potential locations for extraterrestrial life forms in our solar system: under the surface of Mars, Jupiter's moon Europa, and the most promising candidate, Enceladus. The article also adds that much of the knowledge about the 500-kilometer diameter Enceladus comes from the recently ended NASA Cassini mission, which provided highly detailed photographs of the moon during its flybys. But Milner, whose net worth is estimated at $3.5 billion, said he plans to send his probe, whose exact form and route have not yet been established, ahead of a more expensive mission from NASA that might take 10 years to launch. The billionaire, who trained as a physicist in Soviet Russia and currently splits his time between California and Moscow, said that if successful, the expedition would become the first ever privately funded interplanetary science mission. Milner is not the only Russian billionaire taking on the issue of living beyond Earth, or traveling for that matter. CVN has reported a few times on Asgardia, which is being planned as the first space nation. According to the website, the total number of people who have applied for citizenship on Asgardia is around 140,000. The golden number was 100,000, which seems to be the maximum number for the first round of citizens to live on board when it is ready in the future. In the meantime, the founder of Asgardia, Russian billionaire Dr. Igor Ashurbaly, is moving ahead with an active campaign to prepare for the future nation in space. On top of other diplomatic efforts here on Earth, a satellite was recently launched into space to help Asgardia stake its claim for sovereign territory in space. According to the website for Asgardia, on November 12th, the space nation's first satellite, Asgardia 1, was successfully launched into space from the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia, USA. Head of nation Igor Ashurbaly was present to oversee the launch. The launch of Asgardia's first satellite establishes the nation's sovereign territory in space and satisfies the last condition necessary for admission to the UN. That, in addition to the Constitution, a government, and a currency, the nation must have a territory. Asgardia's constitution has already been accepted. Its cryptocurrency, the Solar, is registered at the European Union Intellectual Property Office, and the government formation is underway. The Asgardia 1 satellite is contained within the orbital ATK Cygnus spacecraft, which is flying atop the Antares rocket to the International Space Station. From the ISS, the satellite will be deployed to outer space, flying in a low Earth orbit. Asgardia 1 contains Asgardia's constitution, national symbols, and other documents, as well as files uploaded by Asgardians. The event was given coverage by numerous media outlets, including a few mainstream outlets like CNN. Leah Crane, writing for New Scientist, shared the following. While Ashurbayli has plans to convince the UN to recognize Asgardia as a sovereign nation and someday build Asgardian colonies in space, it is not currently recognized as a nation by any country on Earth. For now, the only benefit offered to citizens of the space nation is the ability to upload data to Asgardia 1 in orbit. Time will tell whether the space kingdom of Asgardia becomes the first space-based nation, or whether it will remain simply an orbiting external hard drive. CNN reported this. For Ashurbayli, the launch fulfills a pledge he made when establishing the space nation, to take its citizens to space via their data. I promised there would be a launch, he says. We selected NASA as a reliable partner because we have to meet the commitments that I made 13 months ago. Not all reports were positive, as might be expected. Neil Patel, writing for Slate.com, described the launch as proof that space is still lawless. He also describes the vision as a kind of futuristic utopian dream that is also totally unrealistic. Clearly, Patel doesn't seem to grasp the idea that this is one of the reasons for why the project was conceived. He also does not appear to be one who is a dreamer and a visionary. I was one of the individuals to be among the first 100,000 applicants for Asgardia, and the website is now promoting an upcoming election for people to represent Asgardia in its parliament. I am announcing that I am planning to submit my application to be a representative on the Asgardian Parliament. I would like to ask a favor of a few CVN listeners, especially those who are connected to high-level institutions or who have high-level credentials, who may be willing to write a short letter of recommendation on my behalf as to why you think I might be a good candidate for Asgardian Parliament, so that I may submit it with my application. If you are a listener who may be willing to do this, please contact me, info@cosmicvisionnews.com, and I can give you more details about what you could write. With all that is now happening around the world, some questions are being asked if Russia may beat the US in making the official declaration that life beyond Earth has been engaging humanity. John Austin, writing for the London Express on October 3rd, reported that Donald Trump and his predecessors have not admitted to the world that aliens exist and are here on Earth because it would breach the U.S. Constitution and risk the collapse of the global economy, it has shockingly been claimed. Austin refers to Stephen Bassett, chief executive of the Paradigm Research Group, stating that he and many others are convinced the U.S. government has been secretly working with alien visitors since 1947 on developing new technologies, but it has kept hidden under a worldwide truth embargo. He believes this is because of fears on the impact on religion, the rule of law, and the fossil fuel economy. Austin continues, Mr. Bassett believes no U.S. officials will ever admit the truth embargo is in place because it will expose a constitutional breach that has been going on for years. He has taken his mission to Russia in the hope that Vladimir Putin will break the embargo and finally admit that aliens are here. Mr. Bassett was given major airtime on REN TV, one of the most watched networks in Russia with a viewer base of 120 million, after being extensively interviewed in Moscow last May. According to a PRG spokesperson, Bassett covered a broad range of topics, including various considerations that might prompt Russian President Vladimir Putin to make the first formal acknowledgement by a head of state regarding an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. PRG believes this to be the first time anyone has made this argument on Russian media inside or outside Russia. Given that it is almost 2018 and the World Cup soccer football event is being held in Russia, it is still perhaps surprising to me that reporters like Austin, who cover disclosure-related stories, have seemingly not yet paid attention to Russia's logo for the event. As far as I am concerned, this logo is very much a statement that there is life in the stars and that there is interaction taking place between Earth and non-Earth civilizations. Russia may very well end up taking the lead role in this disclosure, and certainly for many around the world, including myself, this news cannot come quickly enough. Over to some technology news now. CVN has reported in the past about a new development in transmission technology called Li-Fi. Most are familiar with the term Wi-Fi and also the dangers of it. I will elaborate more on this in the health news segment coming up shortly. Li-Fi appears to be making improvements in its technology. An article on the Science Alert website by Fiona MacDonald in March of this year reported that a new type of Li-Fi has reportedly cracked 40 gigabytes, which is 100 times faster than the best Wi-Fi. MacDonald continues, most Li-Fi systems rely on transmitting data via LED bulbs, which means there are some limitations to how easily the technology could be applied to systems outside the lab. But researchers have come up with a new type of Li-Fi that uses infrared light instead, and it's reportedly already cracked 40 gigabytes per second in early testing. There are problems and health risks associated with Li-Fi using LED-based lights. This type of Li-Fi requires an LED-based light to be on in order for information to be transferred, so working in the dark is out. This may be a good thing anyway, because it's very bad for the eyes and also the body when getting ready to go to sleep. MacDonald explains the new development. Doctorate student Joanne O. from Eindhoven University of Technology in the Netherlands has taken the Li-Fi concept and run with it, creating a new type of system based on harmless infrared light rather than LED. Infrared Li-Fi isn't a new idea, but most other experimental systems use energy-sensitive movable mirrors to beam infrared light, so haven't been very promising for commercialization. Instead, O's system uses passive antennae to send out the data with no moving parts. The blessing and the curse of Li-Fi is that it cannot pass through walls, making it much more secure, but also less user-friendly. MacDonald notes that even though infrared light can pass through more materials than visible light, both types of Li-Fi won't be able to transmit through walls, which is great if you want to keep your connection super secure, but probably not that user-friendly. There's also the question of whether our devices are advanced enough to make use of such super-fast connections. Data still has to be slowed down to be sent around our electricity-based devices. It would be like trying to force a huge source of water through a garden hose. But while researchers figure that out, it's nice to know that there are now 2 promising Li-Fi systems being tested and improved all the time. For those who are not familiar with this term Li-Fi, an article by Christina Mercer on the techworld.com website last July shares the following. Light fidelity, or Li-Fi, is a visible light communications, or VLC, system running wireless communications traveling at very high speeds. Li-Fi uses common household LED or light-emitting diodes, light bulbs, to enable data transfer, boasting speeds of up to 224 gigabits per second. Li-Fi and Wi-Fi are quite similar, as both transmit data electromagnetically. However, Wi-Fi uses radio waves, while Li-Fi runs on visible light. A short video appearing on the PureLiFi.com website offers a little bit more detail.
Imagine a world with unprecedented data and bandwidth. Every year, the world consumes 60% more wireless data. The space for radio frequencies is becoming oversaturated, resulting in what is known as the spectrum crunch. Eventually, radio frequency technology like Wi-Fi and cellular networks will no longer keep up with demand. But imagine you had Li-Fi. Li-Fi doesn't use radio frequencies. It uses the light spectrum, which can open up 1,000 times more bandwidth. Li-Fi will be an integral part of the future of wireless networks, such as 5G. With Li-Fi, we can efficiently use our existing light infrastructures to provide high-speed, secure wireless communications. Li-Fi does not interfere with radio frequencies, which means you can use it in hospitals, power plants, petrochemical plants, and airplanes. The illumination area of Li-Fi is confined to the area that the light touches, which means that unlike Wi-Fi, your signal remains hidden to anyone outside this area. The light is controllable. Simply shut the door or pull the blinds to protect your network from prying eyes.
An article appearing on the Mercola.com website on October 23rd of 2016 explores how LED lighting may compromise one's health. According to this article, near-infrared is important as it primes the cells in your retina for repair and regeneration, which explains why LEDs, which are devoid of infrared, are so harmful for your eyes and health. 1/3 of the energy your body consumes comes from the food you eat. The vast majority of the energy your body needs to maintain this systemic equilibrium comes from environmental infrared light exposure. LEDs sabotage health and promote blindness. Limit your exposure to blue light during the daytime and at night. Swap out LEDs for incandescents or low-voltage incandescent halogen lights. This suggests that a new infrared Li-Fi would be better than an LED-based Li-Fi. A video with more info will appear in the show's transcript. CVN has already covered in detail the dangers of the coming 5G network, which will not be re-explained at this time. The links to two CVN show transcripts, March 20th and June 14th earlier this year, reporting on the dangers of the 5G network, will appear in the show transcript for this story, however. Although this type of technology has some challenges, there are probably the kinds of challenges that many people would gladly take to avoid the hazards of the current Wi-Fi technology. For those who choose to have or to work on computers in the evening before going to bed, it may be worth downloading an app for your computer called f.looks. This app can be set to slowly change the color of your screen to something that is softer and more beneficial for the eyes, especially at night. A link in the show transcript can allow f.looks downloads for Mac, PC, Linux, iPhone, and iPad Android. As well, the show transcript will have a few other links and a video with more information on Li-Fi. Finally, in health-related news, would it surprise you to learn that many technology moguls of today send their children to anti-technology schools, and some even keep technology from their children at a young age? For some listeners, this will not come as a surprise. For others, they may be surprised and wonder why. The answer to this question will be pretty obvious to many. It is not really a secret that today's technologies are harmful to children, especially in their growth and development phases. The tech moguls with their multinational powerful companies have profited dearly, not only on the technological addictions of adults but also children, while neglecting to assume any corporate responsibility in promoting the dangers of addictions and radiation from devices that have the potential to seriously harm children. Today's world presents incredible challenges to parents. It is bad enough that the economy is forcing not only one parent from working extended hours, but in many cases, it is both parents working extended hours. The media and marketing agenda has couples trying to buy houses or items that they may not really be able to afford or need, and the debts that are caused by this make it increasingly hard for a relationship to survive the stresses. Factor in the children now, and the stresses increase. Peer pressure forces children to put demands on parents for products and technologies that will allow them to be cool, or at least current, with the latest trends. This puts more pressure on parents, and when they come home at the end of the day, they are often too exhausted to give their children the attention they deserve and need, often giving them the technologies they want, just so that they can enjoy a peace of mind for her or himself or themselves. Yet, according to an article appearing on the Business Insider website by Chris Weller on November the 8th, technology moguls like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and other high-powered entrepreneurs tend to share the similar qualities: persistence, ingenuity, grit, just to name a few. But one of the more surprising traits is the philosophy that kids ought to be raised tech-free. Gates, for example, did not let his kids use mobile phones until they were 14. Jobs, the inventor of the iPad, prohibited his own kids from using the tech. "We limit how much technology our kids use at home," Jobs told the New York Times in 2011. The article continues, Sherry Turkle, an MIT psychologist and author of numerous books on the negative social effects of technology, including Alone Together and Reclaiming Conversation, has an explanation for this seeming hypocrisy. Those at tech's bleeding edge know full well how dangerous products can be. When people are very sophisticated, they know what not to do, Turkle told Business Insider. "It's in these circles," she said, "that people more often understand the damage smartphones, social media, and other forms of tech can do, especially to young minds." In Turkle's experiences, people who work in Silicon Valley know these risks well. To safeguard their kids, tech worker parents often send their kids to Montessori schools, elite schools that focus less on technology and more on building a child's emotional, social, and intellectual well-being all at once. Others send their kids to Waldorf schools, which take a similar anti-technology philosophy. In Los Altos, California, Waldorf of the Peninsula still uses pen and paper, and sometimes even mud, to mold young minds. Today's world also makes it challenging to find ways to keep technologies out of the bedrooms of children. Electromagnetic energies and radiation is bad enough without children having one or more devices so close to their heads and bodies while they are sleeping. Lloyd Burrell, writing for ElectricSense.com in September of 2010, explains why EMF frequencies in the bedroom are the most harmful. He writes, "If you are in any way concerned about your health and well-being, dealing with nighttime exposures to EMFs is the absolute foundation on which you can build a healthy life. Your immune system does its major repair work while you sleep. This is when your body's cells regenerate, rejuvenate, and detoxify." On the cellular level, Burrell explains that if cells and organs are not able to perform these processes at night, the cell membranes are subjected to constant stress. Healthy cells can be damaged, while unhealthy cells, that's to say infections, mutations, and neural disorders, can proliferate. Nighttime is also the time that your pineal gland produces melatonin, a hormone that helps to regulate sleep and contributes to many vital bodily processes. Studies show that exposure to power frequency EMFs and radio frequency radiation impede the production of melatonin. If your sleeping space is not conducive to the deep sleep phase, eventually your immune system will become overburdened and you'll be opening the door to illness. Studies show EMF's exposures can interrupt sleep cycles, and they are linked to a host of ailments and symptoms like irritation of allergies, tiredness upon awakening, heart palpitations, muscle pain and weakness, and daytime irritability, as well as generally weakening your immune system. Burrell offered 10 tips for creating a low EMF bedroom. 1. No cell phones in the bedroom. No cordless phones in the bedroom. Avoid exposure to bright lights in the 2 hours before you sleep, and replace any compact fluorescent light bulbs with incandescent bulbs. Number 4, unplug all electronics during sleeping hours and never use an electric blanket. Test your home for dirty electricity by using a Graham-Stetzer meter, and then filter out the dirty free electricity using the GS filters. 5, go back to using cables to connect your computer to the internet instead of using Wi-Fi. Be observant to dirty electricity coming from your neighbor's home. If your home is close to a Wi-Fi tower, you may want to explore other protective measures for your bedroom at least. Blackout your bedroom. The more you can achieve total blackout conditions to sleep in, the more chance you have of going into a deep, restful, restorative sleep. Consider replacing your mattress if it has metal springs. The springs may hold residual magnetism, and your metal spring mattress can even act as a giant antenna. The article writes that the magazine Scientific American states, in the U.S., bed frames and box springs are made of metal, and the length of a bed is exactly half the wavelength of FM and TV transmissions that have been broadcasting since the late 1940s. Radiation envelops our bodies so that the maximum strength of the field develops 75 centimeters above the mattress in the middle of our bodies. When sleeping on the right side, the body's left side will thereby be exposed to field strength about twice as strong as what the right side absorbs. The solutions Burrell offers are to buy a chemical-free organic mattress that does not contain metal coils, and choose wood over metal for bed frames and headboards. Burrell also explores the effectiveness of Faraday cages in another article from February 1st of 2014. Burrell explains that 1 hour of daytime EMF exposure does not equal 1 hour of nighttime EMF exposure. Nighttime is when your body's cells regenerate, rejuvenate, and detoxify, as mentioned moments ago. Studies show EMF exposures at night can severely curtail these processes. Nighttime is when your body produces melatonin. So melatonin has been called nature's age-reversing, disease-fighting, sex-enhancing hormone. Sounds far-fetched? We do know that melatonin has an important role to play in the function of the immune system, cancer prevention, and brain function. That's why it's so important to shield your body from EMF exposures at night, and the EMF bed canopy is one of the most effective ways of doing this. A video showing the effectiveness of an EMF Faraday canopy shield will be in the show transcript for this story. An article on the Green Mama website from February 5th of 2016 offers 7 steps to protecting children from the invisible dangers of EMF radiation. Keep kids as far away as possible from cordless phones and mobile phones, Wi-Fi, baby monitors, breaker boxes, and electric outlets. Choose a wired internet when possible. Turn off computers, routers, and Wi-Fi at night. Put the child's bedroom as far from Wi-Fi, routers, electric lines, and breaker boxes as possible. Don't let children talk on cell phones or cordless phones, and don't store your cell phone in the pocket of your baby carrier. Make your baby's room EMF free, at least at night. Even older children are very vulnerable. This article reports that young children are more vulnerable to EMF radiations for many of the same reasons they are more vulnerable to any toxin. Their heads are softer, their brains are developing at a rapid rate, and small influences can have major effects. Older children are still vulnerable, and their exposure is often far more significant. One solution to protecting you while you sleep is to have an EMF bed canopy, as mentioned moments ago. An article on the EMFanalysis.com website offers some valuable hints in selecting the best type of canopy, and the link will be in the show transcript for this story, along with a short video on how the bed canopy works. Science appears to be linking the alarming increase in ADHD, autism, and asthma in children to EMF radiation. An article on earthcalm.com reports that more and more children are exhibiting symptoms due to exposure to EMFs. With their thinner skulls and developing nervous systems, children are even more vulnerable to EMFs than adults are. The article notes the increase in these health conditions in children has risen in the same way the amount of EMF activity has. EMF protection for your children who has one of these conditions could go a long way to easing their symptoms and possibly even prevent the conditions to begin with. The website offers an EMF protection system, and a link and video will also appear in the show transcript for this story. Other options as well include EMF shielding paints and wallpapers, but one may also explore alternative energies such as solar or other sources. Just before this week's final words, I would like to share that I am expecting my schedule to return to some degree of normal, at least for the next month or two. I will be attempting to return to weekly newscasts on Fridays around 7 p.m. or 1900 hours Eastern Time. I appreciate your patience with my unbalanced schedule over the last few months. As events seem to be gearing up for some potentially significant revelations in the world of geopolitics and geoeconomics, I am having to fall back on the generosity and kindness of listeners. Through the month of December, I will be very grateful to receive donations in support of CVN to help it move forward over as many months as possible in 2018. The holiday season is not always the easiest season to find a little extra to share with others, but if there are a number of you who have perhaps never donated during the 5 years, but have benefited from what I have attempted to share with you and the world, this would be wonderful, and it could take some of the burden off the 7 monthly donators and those who have made more than one contribution to help CVN over the years. It is not unreasonable to ask those who have listened regularly over the 5 years of CVN has been on the air and who have never considered offering at least a little bit of support to please reflect on the nature of the holiday season and the spirit of giving and sharing. I will be turning on the link to make donations via PayPal during the month of December. There are lots of rumors relating to certain economic changes taking place flying around now. We will only be sure about the truth of those changes, however, when they actually occur. Until that time, I, like so many of you, have to find ways to move forward and get by with the best that we can and perhaps try to share in any areas where we may feel a bit more abundant. So for those who have donated monthly, I thank you. Those who have donated more than once on a regular basis, I very much thank you, and I hope that many of you who have never donated before might find it in your hearts to reach out. So I thank all of you that may be able to share a bit of support with me and CVN. In this week's final words, I was drawn to share another video log from Patricia Cota Robles. As we reflect on all that is happening in the world at this time, we know that we are anchoring new energies of a higher vibration in co-creating the new Earth that many of us are claiming to want to experience. This week, Patricia shares her personal experiences as it relates to tithing, or the sharing of a specific percentage of her income in service to humanity and the planet. She offers an affirmation as well to practice when sharing with others, and invites people to observe how abundance flows back to one who shares with life in gratitude for one's own gift of life. Until our next moment of now, create a wonderful week. With permission from Patricia, I share her video log 28, Co-Creating Abundance.
In vlog 27, we learned from the company of heaven that the key to our financial freedom involves giving a portion of our money back to God in ways that add to the light of the world and reflect our love and appreciation for our gift of life. This always brings up the question of just how much money do we need to donate in order to reclaim our divine birthright and receive the flow of God's abundance. The beings of light said that if we will donate as little as 10% of our income to add to the light of the world, we will receive such a flow of abundance back into our life that we will not be able to handle it all. If you are struggling financially, I know that 10% of your income sounds monumental. But let me share my personal experience with you. Please know that I do not ever teach something that I have not proven to myself to be true beyond a shadow of a doubt. That is the case even if the information is coming from the company of heaven. If I cannot prove what I am learning, I do not teach it. That does not mean that the information being given to humanity from on high is not true. It just means that I will not teach something that I have not been able to prove to myself. The concept of 10% of our income being the critical mass necessary for us to reclaim the infinite flow of God's abundance is something I have proven to myself beyond a shadow of a doubt and witnessed with many, many people over the years. Decades ago, when I was shown the bigger picture by the company of heaven and decided to set aside my preconceived skepticism about what is commonly called tithing, I did what people usually do. When I received my paycheck, I paid all of my bills, and then with the money that was left over, I decided how I was going to use a portion of that money to add to the light of the world. With every donation, I affirmed, this money is a gift of love that I am giving back to my Father, Mother, God in appreciation for my gift of life. It is adding to the light of the world and blessing everyone and everything in its path. In fulfillment of the law of the circle, I accept and know that this money is returning to me greatly expanded over what I am sending out. This is occurring with the highest good of all concerned, and so it is. Then I paid attention to the money that was flowing back to me through various means. My flow of abundance did increase to a small degree, even though the amount I was donating never was as much as 10% of my income. Then one day, during my meditation, the beings of light asked me, how much do you tip a server who brings you a meal in a restaurant? I said without hesitation that I always tip 20% of whatever the bill is. And they responded, isn't it amazing that you don't think twice about tipping 20% to someone who serves you a meal, but you do not think that you can afford to give 10% back to God in appreciation for your gift of life? I had never thought of it that way, and I was shocked when I realized how true their words were. So I decided to change the way I was making my donations. Instead of paying all of my bills first and donating my gift of love to God from whatever I had left over, I started donating 10% of my income before I paid my bills. I will admit to you that initially there was a period of adjustment, but that did not last too long. After several months, I was in the flow. And since that time, decades ago, I have never been unable to pay my bills or to give my monetary gift of love to God in appreciation for my gift of life. So let me share some words of encouragement with you. Again, I will say that if you truly believed that when you gave a portion of your money in ways that will add to the light of the world, it will greatly expand and return to you, you would not hesitate to donate your money, even if you thought you couldn't afford it. If you are hesitant to do this, it simply means that you do not know if this is true or not, and you are afraid to take the risk, which is perfectly normal. But the only way you will prove to yourself whether or not this universal law is true is by taking the chance of experimenting with it. If you have a lot of fear about giving 10% of your income in appreciation for your gift of life, then don't begin with that much money. Instead, choose the amount of money that feels safe to you and donate it somewhere that makes your heart sing and adds to the light of the world. Before you donate your money, state this affirmation. This money is a gift of love that I am giving back to my Father, Mother, God in appreciation for my gift of life. It is adding to the light of the world and blessing everyone and everything in its path. In fulfillment of the law of the circle, I accept and know that this money is returning to me, greatly expanded over what I am sending out. This is occurring with the highest good of all concerned. And so it is. After you donate your money, pay attention to every penny that flows back into your life. People with a fixed income usually feel that this process will not work for them because they do not have another avenue through which to receive more money. But that is not true. God is infinitely creative and very practical. So do not limit God's ability to increase the flow of money back into your life with your doubts and fears. Be open and receptive to everything that increases your money. If you go out to lunch with a friend and you thought that you were going to pay for the lunch, but they end up paying for it, accept that this is your money flowing back to you. If you need to buy something and it happens to be on sale, accept that this is also your money flowing back to you. If someone gives you something that you want or need, and now you do not have to spend money buying it for yourself, that too is your money flowing back to you. If your utility bills or your grocery bills or the gas for your car are less than normal, accept that as your flow of money returning to you. If you receive a larger tax return than you thought you were going to receive, or anything else in your life that saves you money and gives you more money in your pocket, accept that that is your gift of love flowing back into your life. Know that this is an ongoing process. Don't donate money and then wait for money bags to appear at your doorstep before you give your next donation. Keep on keeping on. And as you create the habit of giving and receiving, you will become more and more confident about this process. Before long, you will prove to yourself that using your money to add to the light of the world is truly the key to financial freedom, and the way you will reclaim your divine birthright by co-creating God's infinite abundance and eternal peace tangibly in your life.
So that is a sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is broadcast weekly, and a transcript of this broadcast with all supporting links are published in the show transcript on the CosmicVisionNews.com website. CVN can be followed on numerous social websites, including Minds, Unseen, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that courage is staying in step while others are marching to the wrong tune. Until our next moment of now, may you be guided and protected in your service to humanity and the planet. Namaste.